Dear Grad Student. Wow, well, I had to re-record this intro after launching the podcast last Monday. I just wanted to say thank you to every single person for the likes and retweets and follows and shares and DMs and posts and ratings on Apple Podcasts and everything. And wow, launching was one of the scariest things that I've ever done, and you have all helped me feel like it was worth it. So, thanks. Also, happy start of fall semester 2020. I hope everyone is staying as safe as they are able to this semester, and we are all going to get through this together. Thanks for spending some of your time with the podcast today. Today's episode is all about free resources to improve your research efficiency with the co-founders of You Can Grad School, Dustin Haraden and Kate McCormick. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Dear Grad Student, the podcast where grad students can come together to celebrate, commiserate, and support one another through this long and difficult journey. I'm Elana. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student and your host, and I'm joined today by the co-founders of You Can Grad School, a weekly meeting and blog-based resource for grad students to help them navigate their research careers, ranging from things like efficiency tools and citation managers and programming and open science. And so please welcome fifth-year grad student in clinical and community psychology, Dustin Haraden, and incoming first-year student in human development, Kate McCormick.
Thank you for having us.
I was thinking that we could start out, I just would love to hear from both of you. How did you guys meet? How did You Can Grad School come to be? And all of that information.
So I guess I can talk a little bit about how we met, and then Dustin can launch into You Can Grad School, because that was originally kind of his idea and then went from there. So I moved in 2018 to Illinois to start my second post-bac position. And through that, I met Dustin and a bunch of other really great grad students. And Dustin and I sort of bonded over the fact that we were both interested in open science and open science practices. And Dustin was a lot more knowledgeable about these things, and also kind of kept handing down tools and things that I would help make my life more smooth and easygoing in the research process. And so we just sort of became friends and colleagues at the same time, I would say. Colleagues first, then friendship later. I don't know.
So were you a postbac in the lab that he's a grad student in, or was it different labs?
Yeah, it was the same lab.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so Kate was there for a while, and it was really great getting to know her and talk to her about all of her running. And by talk about that, I mean her discussing her running and trying to convince everybody else to run.
It's like vegans. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I haven't done either, so Kate has failed.
Yeah, I failed everyone. No one's started running.
Well, I run seasonally, and by that I mean when I sign up for a half marathon, I'm a runner, and other times I'm pausing. And I tried the vegan thing for a week, and I failed at that. So either way, those are hard things to latch onto.
Yeah, and I think I always try to infect other people with my enthusiasm, but I think it just kind of turns into, it's a little misdirected.
Story of my life. Absolute story of my life. I'm currently trying to convince one of my best friends to watch Supernatural. I don't know if you guys have ever watched it.
Yeah.
I only ever watched up to season 12, and so I'm watching all the way back from the beginning because I know they just finished, and it's not working. She's not convinced, even though she's somebody who loves, especially the culty TV shows that you just really latch on. But anyways, I just have to say, I was really looking into You Can Grad School, especially over the past few weeks, and I really, really enjoy the content you guys put out. I can tell that you're really both passionate about open science and efficiency, and I feel like that really speaks to me, and I really think that all grad students need these skills. And then above that, when I first looked into it, I didn't realize they were meetings, and in the sense that anyone could join, and just listening, because you guys have posted them on your YouTube channel, I felt like part of this community, and I felt understood, and I was like, I'm one of those people, this applies to me. And I just think that you guys are really good hosts in that, and the things that you talk about, I feel like there are things I see floating around on academic Twitter, and I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. And when I have time next summer, I'm going to look at that thing, and I'm going to bookmark, and then I never do.
Yeah.
Because it's both accessible and also somehow not accessible at the same time. So tell me a little bit about what your journey has been like. Okay, now you've started it, and what it looks like week to week, and how people have been benefiting from it.
Can I embarrass Dustin for a second?
Please.
Do it. Please.
Yeah. So sorry, you're shaking your head really fast. So just to say from my end, one of the reasons I think it works really well is Dustin already employs a lot of really good organizational and open science and R strategies into his research and what he does. He's come by it in a really like great way where it's really a part of all of his processes. And like for me, it's more aspirational. And so for me, it's like, I want to learn more about this. And I get to like pick Dustin's brain in a really like organized way. And so just to say, like, I have benefited so much from like Dustin's guidance. And so I think the balance is like, I'm asking a lot of the questions that like I think people who are just starting out in these resources, and Dustin is kind of the expert in these. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Kate. I really love, I don't feel embarrassed. I feel heard. I feel seen. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one of the things, like, I guess to tie it back to Kate infecting people with running, I want to do that with these practices. And so that same enthusiasm is like, I want other people to benefit from these things the way that I have. And I've seen all of this growth and change and like just making my whole life easier, because grad school is hard. And like, I think one of the things that we want to try to show is that it doesn't have to be, that there are a lot of steps that we take that may be unnecessary or just may be too complicated, and that can be simplified way easier than you think. And it is one of those things where you're like, oh, I saw about like JASP or Jamovi or Rstudio. Like I saw all these things, but that feels a little bit too far ahead. I need to finish this project that I'm working on right now. And so we want to try to be that bridge to navigate these things, to really help support. And I've tried to do this in the department that I'm involved in. Like I would have weekly sessions where I invited all the grad students in our department and just said like, hey, I'm going to talk about open science, and like, let's talk about these things. Let's talk about how to pre-register, what is OSF, how to do all these steps, because these are going to be easier for you. And it might be a little bit of legwork at the front, but it's going to really benefit you down the road. And I think that's one of the things that I've really understood, is that like we waste a ton of time as just like grad students, as academics. And if we just put in maybe a little bit more time at the front, changed some things, then like we would save so much.
Yeah, you talked a little bit on the blog about like becoming your worst collaborator is like the easiest thing that you can do. And so I think, I really like that you talked about being that bridge, because it kind of speaks to exactly what I said. Like I didn't have a bridge. I'm like, yeah, all of these things. And also, how do I approach this? How do I do it in approaching things in an efficient way? Like I think about R and I'm like, yeah, there's so many things I can do, and we'll kind of chat about that in a bit. It's so overwhelming. I'm like, where do I start? And you're totally right. I have this project or this paper, and that is really priority on my radar. And, my lab mates and my mentor will be the first person to tell you that like prioritizing is my biggest thing, because I just get really excited. Like I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to do this. And so, when you think about things like citation managers, which we're going to talk about, and all of that, yeah, it sounds like a really great tool, but technically you can get away without using them. So you think so I don't really have to. And then exactly what you said, you waste actually a ton of time because, X hours you didn't put into learning some of these efficiency tools bites you in the butt later. And the other thing is that what you guys are doing on You Can Grad School, it's almost like Dustin is also doing live with Kate, right? Where Kate, you're like an incoming student and you also have a lot of knowledge as an incoming student. Like I did not. I was, right out of college, started grad school. So I thought I knew a ton and it didn't. And it's like really cool that you guys are actually modeling that as you're also doing it. So I think that that's a really great sort of setup and model for everyone who is coming and listening to you guys. So before we jump into resources, I do want to point out to all listeners at this point that you can find You Can Grad School on their website, and that's going to be youcangradschool.netlify.app, or you can find them on Twitter. And if you don't want to type out that website I just said, you can also just find the link on their Twitter, and that's at can_grad. So why don't we go ahead and jump into some of these resources that we've already mentioned. Most of these resources are listed for episode 2 for you guys, both in the blog post and then the YouTube video. I think you changed my life. Like, I'm not really, part of me was like, have I been doing this wrong for 4 years? Like, I really feel like I've let myself down. If I haven't been using these, am I a lost cause? Is there still hope?
Yeah, no, I think so.
Great.
I think you've made it so far and you're here. Yeah, I think we can help.
That's good. Yeah, I just, for anyone listening, if you're about to hear these and you're like, wow, I haven't been doing any of this, there's still hope for you. And that comes from Dustin. So if you have any issues, you can go right to Dustin. This isn't my fault.
Yep. You can find me at Dustin Haraden on Twitter, or you can probably find my email and send me an email.
There you go. And Kate, how about you give your information too, and then we'll jump in so people can follow you before we even get started, because I'm sure they're already huge fans of what you guys are doing and what you're going for. So what's your Twitter?
Yeah, so mine is the letter K and the number 8_MCC. Yeah, you can direct message me or tweet at me and I can give you my email. So, and I think that's the thing, like Dustin and I are really passionate about is like, we want people to feel like they can reach out. Or we just did a thing yesterday, like a talk / or 2 days ago, that'll be posted in like a week or two about, or by the time this comes out, it'll be up about applying to grad school. So, for me, that's like where my expertise lies, since I just did that. And Dustin has like all of the grad school knowledge. So we want people to feel like they can reach out. That's part of the like community aspect. So we encourage that. And
obviously, I'm all about that community thing. I'm sort of doing a similar but also separate thing from you guys. But that community that we can all build, I think, as grad students is really valuable. And so anyone listening, go ahead and give them a follow. And let's go ahead now and jump into some resources. I was thinking we could start with Sci-Hub, and really specifically why we definitely should not use it.
Yeah, so Dustin told me about Sci-Hub. And so I think a lot of people, particularly if you are not associated with an institution, there's an option, and maybe you shouldn't use it. But if you look up or Google Sci-Hub, it can give you access or work through paywalls to give you access to articles. I know a lot of times I click on all of the individual links to see if I have any access to them in any way, when it's like 12 different versions on like Google Scholar, and I don't have any of those options, then I use Sci-Hub. And I think as we're like headed into uncertain times where resources aren't equal, as they've always been unequally spread, but like as we're becoming more aware of it, I think it's a great but wrong tool because it allows you access to see those articles that you might have to pay for. And I do think knowledge should be available to everyone, and the system is a little bit broken there. So I think it's a great bad tool.
Yeah, fair assessment.
Even if your university does have access or you have access, there's like 7 extra clicks you have to do just to get the PDF. And then sometimes it's like, oh, it's not even a PDF. Like, that is very frustrating, and Sci-Hub really cleans that up, where you can just put in the name, the title of the article you're interested in, and it's like, hey, here's your PDF, nice and free, and here you go. But in reality, we always want to pay like Elsevier or Elsevier. I think it's Elsevier. It's like it's pronounced how it shouldn't be, and we definitely need to put money in their pocket instead of
absolutely
like giving the people writing the articles. They shouldn't get any credit for that.
No, I really don't believe crediting people who actually create the work, either with compensation money-wise or with even a name. For everyone listening, we are being so sarcastic.
Yes, very.
I was like, ooh, maybe I'm playing that off a little too good. I don't want to freak people out. Like, this is the first resource. I don't know. It's too much.
Yeah, to be noted, so Sci-Hub is wrong to use because it is technically, I don't think, legal, because it is routed through Russian servers, Ukrainians, or something like that.
They've had to change like the hosting a couple times, I think. Like the URL has changed, which makes me think that, yeah, it's basically like pirating in a way.
Yeah. Well, and like it's interesting because also with the sort of open science movement happening the way that it is, most of these papers are on like ResearchGate, or they're on like SciArchive, or, they already exist in other places, which also raises this question of like if I'm getting it on ResearchGate, is that just as bad? I know the authors have technically posted it at that point, but like they're still not getting compensation if they're putting it on ResearchGate, or if they're putting it on their own website, even though they have the right to do so. So it's one of those things that it's like, use with caution, use, at your sort of own decision and expense. And if you're asking me for my official stance on it, definitely don't use it. Worst thing I've ever heard of. Right. I like to generally follow the legal system otherwise. Okay, let's jump into really the resource. I've technically used this before. but I didn't stick with it. And I don't think that I really got it until I was watching, again, this episode 2 of you guys. But let's talk about citation managers. Let's talk about Zotero. Let's talk about it changing lives. And like I said before, I don't actually use one regularly as a fourth-year grad student. And so I would love to hear from either of you why that is stupid of me to not be using a citation manager.
Kate, do you want to start this or?
Yeah, so I would say, like, I didn't use it's one of the things where I taught the undergrads. I was like, use Zotero. Like every day I was like trying. I don't think any of them like it caught on. I think sometimes it just like takes a few years before you like implement it.
Oh, you mean like me?
Potentially, yeah.
We're talking about somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't even know
definitely.
her. Haven't heard of her. Yeah.
Don't know who is she. But yeah. So like for me, it was like my first job out of post-bac. We were using EndNote, and it was this like it ended up being so.
Yeah, that's an
funky.
appropriate response.
Yeah. It ruined every time. So I had to do citations like 5 times because I would send it to my PI. And she'd make edits to the paper and she'd send it back. And then like the whole thing would be undone and I'd have to restart it. And so I was like, there has to be a better way. And so I was like, is it okay if I look up different citation styles and enter Zotero? So I used it. I would say there are like 2 big uses for Zotero. There's like the just like managing your citations and your maybe like your readings for yourself, which maybe Dustin can get into, but like just the ease in which it can be integrated in like your papers. And I'll have a folder every time, all 2 times I've worked on a paper. And I had it right there. And in the end, someone wanted me to send that folder and I was able to do it, and it made it so much easier. There's a plugin on Google Chrome, and we talk about it in the episode, how to set it up.
And Firefox.
And Firefox. Yeah, sorry.
Dustin and I were fighting about Google Chrome and Firefox before we started recording, which I'm sure will go live here in a moment. We'll really go in for a battle, but
whatever browser you want to use, I'm pretty sure it has a plugin.
Not Microsoft Edge or whatever they're trying to rebrand.
Oh, it's Internet Explorer. I mean, honestly, come on. I mean, part of me is like, that's a great branding decision. And then the other part of me is like, it's still Microsoft. I feel like you've lost us. Just tell us to use Google Chrome and we would all be really happy with that recommendation.
Google Chrome and Firefox. So anyway, yeah. So it's just like this nice plugin. And then you have the like desktop Zotero, and those 2 like communicate with each other, which is great. So you find your article, 2 clicks, it's added into your library, and then you can type in like easily. It's integrated into your Word doc, or I think it can also be in like I think it can also be used for like Google Drive. Yeah, Dustin.
Can you use it for R Markdown, Dustin?
So you need a citation manager in order to use it in R Markdown. Okay. It's not as seamless as it is within like Microsoft Word or Google Docs. You have to have all of your like citations saved, and then you import that into your Markdown document, and then you're good to go.
So I have used Zotero like with an undergrad mentor. I managed a project for her, and then once I started grad school, she was like, let's write a paper, and I was like, I can literally physically never say no to that, so let's do it. And so I used it, but it's in a totally different area. I was in a neuropsych lab, now I'm in a psychoneuroimmunology lab, so I used it for that paper, and I really liked it. But then I was like, okay, I have all this stuff on like sleep and ADHD, and I don't really do any of that. And so I got really like, I don't know how to organize this, so I'm going to step away slowly and pretend it doesn't exist, and like I don't have to deal with it. And then I was watching your episode, the YouTube posting of what you guys did, and Kate, I think you were the one who shared the screen for that episode. And I had this, that meme that's like the head exploding, where it's like I had that moment because I was looking and I was like, oh my gosh, you can organize it by paper and I can still just have general resources. So I started to dabble, I think like Friday, because I'm like working on prepping things for an eventual F31 submission.
Yeah.
But I'm prepping for that and I'm just organizing things for it. And it is a lot more theory than I've ever had to work with. And I'm making more decisions than I have ever independently had to make. And so I started to play around with it and I realized it did this really cool thing. So if I put something into a folder, for example, for like self-regulation, which is like an area that I do stuff with, I can have folders within that of like things that make up self-regulation. And the other thing is that once I'm working on the paper, I can drag that citation into the folder with the paper, and then it exists in both folders. And that, for me, I think was the thing that like blew my mind, because the whole time I'm like, these things can't just exist in one, right? And if I'm doing this paper, how do I make this references list if I use some and I don't use all of them? And I don't know if it was Dustin's screen next or whose, but it was like a paper and they showed the drop down and they had a folder for included and then a folder for no. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I can start by having them all there. I can decide and write my paper. I can just put them in and then it just makes it. And I was like, whoa, I've been doing it wrong. I'll admit it.
But I think everybody does, because that's what everybody has done before. And everybody, maybe they've used EndNote or something and they're like, oh, well, this is not good. So all of them must not be good. But Zotero is free, which is amazing. And one of the things that Kate and I are always kind of looking for, because, I'm sure, as you know, grad students don't get paid a whole lot. Spoiler alert. Yeah,
but
I know.
But Dustin,
hold on.
I thought I'd be a millionaire.
I'm about to start grad school. No one told me about this.
Oh, sorry, Kate.
Surprise.
That's our next episode. I forgot to tell you.
5 to 7 years until I start making some kind of income.
Wait, I was going to say, who's making money as a postdoc? Not. Send me there. I think you're definitely right, though, Dustin, that people don't know about it. I know there's somebody in my lab who, until 2 years ago, was still hand typing citations. I know that Google Scholar will do that, where you push the little cite button and you always have to fix it a little bit. It's never fully right, but that's what I've been doing. And is that the worst? No. I have a Word document of these are my citations, and then I'll highlight what I'm definitely including, put all those things in, and it sorts automatically, which is more efficient of a word use, but still not efficient at all compared to what Zotero can do. And so, you already mentioned this a little bit earlier, Kate, that it works well with Word. Can you guys talk a little bit about what, other than just organizing your citations and being a place where you can have all of those seminal papers about this thing that you don't have to Google every time, tell me a little bit about the actual application of it once you're writing the manuscript.
So what is really great is you can integrate it into Word. So whatever, I think it's Word and Google Docs are the two that I've used. And so you'll have your desktop client for Zotero open, and then you'll be writing your manuscript. And there's a little plugin where I have a keyboard shortcut. So whenever I'm putting in a citation, I hit this keyboard shortcut, a search bar comes up, I search for the paper, I hit enter, and then it puts the citation in text. And as you're writing, you can continue to do that. You do that for all of your citations. And at the end, you hit create my references, and it puts them all in the order that they need to be. Whenever you're putting a paper, you're downloading it from the internet, it will automatically update all of the citation styles or the citation itself. And so then that all gets imported into your Word doc. And then it might be the case you're writing a grant at some point.
Yep. It's going to happen. And a year from now, and I'm still doing this,
Good.
I'm like, guys, I'm still going to write that grant. Just wait. Anyways.
And I'm copy pasting.
No, never again.
Stuff.
No, this is my promise
Perfect.
to you guys.
Okay,
I
good.
promise that when I write my grant, I'll use a Citation Manager.
That's why
That's great.
I put up my first stab at an R website, and I think public accountability is great.
There you go.
I feel like this could be a support group. My name's Elana. I haven't used a Citation Manager, and I'm a 4th year grad student. Everyone's like, hi, Elana.
And then I get up and I just
that's
point
right,
at you.
That's right.
No, that's not support. That's shame circle.
Yeah, right. That's
true.
A close second.
Yeah, it's still motivating. We can have everybody listening. Maybe we'll make a certificate where it's I vow to use Zotero.
Right. We'll just sign our souls away, and it can only benefit us.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I was actually wondering, and either of you can speak to this. So with APA 6th and 7th, they did this really great change with citations that makes your citations in text a little bit less wordy. So it's more than, I think, 3 authors, and all of a sudden you're et al.ing all of it, where it used to be was it 6 or more or 5 or more? 6 or something?
Yeah, and you still had to do ellipses or whatever.
Now that there's been that change, and so I'm kind of running into this thing where journals used to be 6th, and now they have this and on this date we're going to start, you have to be in 7th. So if I've written a paper in APA 6th, because that's what my automatic body's doing, and let's say I've used this reference manager, and let's say that I go and I click on the Zotero plugin for Word, and I'm like, please change this to APA 7th. And it changes my reference list. Does it also change my in-text citations automatically? You're both nodding. Oh my God.
We're nodding. Yes,
it
will do that. And then for grants, in text, usually you have the author's names. you can change it so that it is only a number. So then you have more text to be able to put, and like you can switch back and forth between different
And I
formats.
think what's great about that too is like you don't have to waste brain space being like, what's the difference between like when they're seventh and eighth? You're like, what's the difference between seventh and eighth? Like when you were like, do you know? I thought you were going to ask us if we know anything about the difference between APA 6 and APA 7th, and then you explained it. I was like, totally new information.
Well, and I had to know it because I would like, I would send things to my mentor, and she'd be like, "This isn't in the right format." But it would be like, it wouldn't be like, "This is what you're doing wrong." I'd be like, "Oh, I need to find out which part of this is different." And like this has happened multiple times where part of it is like Google Scholars button didn't give me the right thing. So it's like, A, I should have checked, and B, like changes were made. So I had to like I learned them because I had to, not because I was like, let me go read the APA manual and see the changes they've made.
To spend $50 on the new book, and
which is also like Purdue OWL exists, so I don't know how they're charging money or how Purdue OWL actually sends that out. I guess Purdue OWL is another resource that I don't even have on my list, but if you need citation help or APA help, go to Purdue OWL.
For me, like it's one thing is like it saves brain space too, where like I'm detail oriented in one way but not another, and citations before would be like pulling teeth for me to like individually check where it like almost became like mentally impossible because I was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to double check this in Purdue. Exactly right. Like I remember spending so much of my like high school and college days on Purdue out, like, and being like, am I like italicizing this correctly? And I was an English minor, and so going back and forth between APA and MLA was such a pain in the butt. And I think that's like a big part of like how Dustin operates and I aspire to operate is like taking that step away so you have your brain space and time for more important things, right?
Well, and the other thing too that like I think about, I mean, I'm still at the point where I'm going through lots and lots of manuscript drafts before I'm at the point of like submitting. And so, and also this should shock nobody, my like thing is that I'm a little bit wordy. So my whole thing, so I'm usually cutting a ton out of what I've originally written, and a lot of that sometimes includes citations. And so I come up against this wall that like when I have the sort of like green light from my mentor, like, yes, we can go ahead and submit. First, I'm going through like, okay, let's write down all the people I cited. Are they in my reference list? And if they are, like, highlight them. And then after I've done all of them, it's like, who isn't highlighted? Who do I need to delete? Like, it's hours. There's been times where I'm like, I'm going to just like turn on the Hamilton soundtrack and I'm only going to work on it for like this amount of time. And I'll like finish the soundtrack and it'll restart and I'm still doing references. Tell me why. Tell me why. Why am I doing this to myself? Again, it's like if I just put a little bit of time organizing some of my references, even if I've started in a folder, if I had just taken, instead of spending those 2 hours on checking citations or references, if I'd taken those 2 hours to organize things in Zotero so that if I deleted out a reference in text, or I'm sorry, I deleted out a citation in text, it would automatically take it off my reference list. Like, mind literally blown. Like, I think I knew better, but I didn't listen to myself.
No, like, right? Like, that's the problem. There's like why is this taking so long? And I still like do these things sometimes where like you get caught in this trap where you're like, oh, if I do it by hand this time, it'll be faster than having to learn this whole new system. I don't really care about my future self that much enough to like change my process.
Or the other trap, which is like, I've gotten much faster this than the last time I tortured myself through it, so it won't be that bad. And it kind of feels good to do mindless things. It's fine. It's not fine. It is not fine.
No, and there's an easier way. And I think, again, that's why it's like nice to have a resource where it's like, there's an easier way and we're going to teach you the easiest way to do it. And by we, I mean Dustin. Occasionally I have extra potential ideas.
So do you guys have any advice for people who are listening to this and they're like, wow, I have 4 pages of resources and references and areas all scattered throughout my computer. Where do I start organizing? What would you say to those people?
I would say download Zotero and then have, like, they may be in all different folders, but you probably have them under like a reading folder. There's one parent folder that has all of them. Go in there, search for .pdf, take everything that you found, drag and drop it right into Zotero. From there, you can start organizing, but now you have it in Zotero, and it doesn't matter if it's nicely organized, you can still use the citations in Word or anything. So just like get it started is really the biggest thing. And probably my explanation of how long it's going to take is going to be longer than you actually doing it.
The other thing I noticed, again, because on Friday I was finally like, okay, you've convinced me, and I almost feel like I can't allow myself to do it the way I was doing because now I know better. So I started doing this, and every once in a while, and maybe this is a Google Chrome thing, but I'm going to say it's a Zotero thing. Every once in a while, it inputs the information a little bit wrong. So like once you import it into Zotero, you want to make sure that the PDF thing goes from like grayed out to not grayed out, I guess. And so as long as it's definitely like, yep, we can put the PDF along with the citation, go in and just make sure the pages are right, go in and just check that the title is right and the authors are right, just right when you download it, which also saves you time later from not having those things correct. I guess, the other thing that kind of goes along with Zotero that was also news to me, like, honestly, I don't know how I survived this long. The Google Scholar button actually does something. Did you know? Did anyone else not know this?
No, I didn't know this before Dustin shared.
Oh my God. Okay, so here I am thinking this little guy with the hat is just like chilling in my like Google Chrome bar. And I'm like, okay, I've downloaded, like, look at that extension. I've never touched it in the 3 years, whatever, I've been a grad student. Okay, come Friday, I'm watching episode 2 and Dustin's like, oh yeah, you just click on it and the PDF is right there. You don't have to copy and open a new tab and make sure it's a Google Scholar tab and paste in your article. No. You click this button and it goes right to the link. Again, my mind was blown. Kate, did it change your life too? Am I just like way out of it? Like, where have we been?
It's been a while since I actually, like, since we've had that episode, it was a new tool for me. So I haven't used it yet. So I'll used it a lot, I guess. I've used it like once. So I'll let Dustin kind of explain it, but
yeah, for sure.
It hasn't changed my life yet, but I'm prepared.
Oh my gosh, it is going to.
Yeah, it's awesome. It like saves time. That's what I'm all about, is saving time, being more efficient so that you can have space to do other stuff. So yeah, you download that plugin, you've got your little Google Scholar buddy up there, and you can, if you're in, like, maybe you're reading a PDF online and you highlight the author, you hit copy, and then you click that button and it's going to search Google Scholar for you. And if you've connected your Google Scholar maybe to your university, then it's going to look for PDFs there. Or you can copy, paste into Sci-Hub and then go from there. But it will give you everything, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and the area that I think it really saved time for me is actually related to Zotero, which is why I sort of have it mixed into this section, because if you're on a link for like Springer or you're on one of these journal websites and it isn't accessible for whatever reason on the link that you clicked to get to this paper, well, when you click the Zotero button, it's going to be like, we can send you a snapshot, but we do not have the PDF. So if you are using sort of in conjunction with this, like saving things to Zotero, if you're clicking the Google Scholar button and you're going to a page that has the PDF, when you click the Zotero button, the PDF is definitely there. It can definitely find it. And so it just makes that process, like using Zotero, even more seamless, in addition to the fact that like you can look at the PDF before you save it to Zotero. And again, it just making sure you're efficient. You don't just have 500 papers sitting in there that are like, I'm definitely going to get to that.
I still have that.
I mean,
still have a
okay,
bunch of
right.
papers.
We're still going to have that.
Yeah.
But maybe we can cut
cite
down
them
on it.
easier.
We can cite them easier when we eventually use them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's key.
I think with the thing that was nice, like what Kate was saying with that project that she worked on, is that it does all the organizing for you on the back end. So if you need to share references and it's in a single folder, it's a lot easier to do. Or if you're transferring from like one computer to the next, like I recently had to do, I was able to just copy my library, put it on my new machine, and I was good to go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there used to be, you can get another paid service through Zotero where it will save all of your PDFs to the cloud. And then you can work on multiple machines, it can be really helpful. And I think they're trying to expand other integrations to like Google Drive, maybe where it saves it there, or OneDrive, something like that. But again, it's free, it's open source. Like that's what's so awesome.
I think it's going to be really obvious, hopefully to my mentor, but also just like to people in general, on the papers where I'm using it and where I'm not. Because I also think, when you're holding so much theory and things in your mind, especially when it's new, because you're learning so much at once and you're figuring out exactly what your sort of like can of worms is in grad school, it's hard to have that organized in your mind. Mm-hmm. And so also the way that you write papers and the way that you conceptualize theory also improves when it's organized, when I'm not holding all of that in my head and I can visualize it a lot better, or, get a better gist of what's going on. Papers are written better. And I am always working on my academic writing. I think that I'm really bad at it. That's probably not true, classic grad student, but I think I'm really bad at it. So this is also a way for people who are like, I'm not convinced. Okay, well, it's going to improve your writing, and that's what gets you jobs. So do it, people.
Do it.
There's one other feature I forgot to mention is you can also have a shared group library. And so Dustin, the postdoc in our lab at the time, and myself, we like shared a library when we were working on like a potential paper together or potential idea. And that was also really helpful because we could add things on either end and then it was visible. So I think we're both really passionate about collaboration and like sharing ideas. And that's a really good place to do it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, that you can share libraries. So what you're basically saying is that, any of you could access this library as long as you were connected to essentially Wi-Fi. And so if you put something in it and took some notes on a PDF, like Dustin, if he was chilling out at, 2 a.m. on his computer, he could look and see the notes he took earlier that day with that paper and add whatever papers he wanted to.
Yeah, I hope he's getting better sleep. But I think it was up. I know Dustin's a sleep researcher, so I would feel.
Oh, that's funny. I knew that, but didn't even connect.
If he was practicing that poor sleep habit. But
I mean, speaking of efficiency, that's huge for efficiency, especially when you're working on projects and you're collaborating, which all of us are. I don't think anyone that I can think of is doing many solo projects as a grad student. And if you are, I think you're lying. Someone's helping you. We all need a little bit of help.
Yes, definitely. And it's the other thing, I could write something and integrate my citations and then send it over to Kate, and then she could write something else and still integrate the same citations because we're all pulling from the same library, and then it will format it all nicely. Yes.
It just because on my end, I'm like,
kiss.
oh, it's helpful for research, but you're like, no. When you're writing, if you're connected to the same library, that is wow.
Yeah, it's really great. And then sometimes I think I've had it where for some reason one of the other grad students would change all the citations to Danish or some other random language.
Good.
And then it's really easy to change it back because once you get it, you just hit refresh and it's oh, this is what you meant.
Mendeley is another one I know people have used, which is open source. And so we really like Zotero because that's what we're familiar with. But not to obscure the Mendeley people. I think that also has benefits. There is a cap, I think, for both of them and how much data you can use. I have yet to reach it, so I feel pretty confident in Zotero as a source.
Yeah, I do know that Mendeley, I think it automatically gives you the cloud space thing. You're automatically working on a cloud if you want to, but it is owned by our favorite company, Elsevier. And so I don't know, I kept that in mind. I started using it and I thought it was very reminiscent of EndNote, but less glitchy and bad. And you can technically open up the PDFs in Mendeley, but for whatever reason, I still find Zotero to be a little bit user-friendlier. So one of the next resources that I have written down is admittedly going to probably be its own episode. I want to talk a little bit about R. And the reason I say a little bit is if anyone's already checked out You Can Grad School, you'll see that they have numerous episodes on R and all the things that you can do with it. And I realized so quickly that there's just too much information to put into this one episode. Why don't you give a little bit of information about why they should tune into your episodes about R and what they can do with it as a grad student, at least, before we also have an episode sort of summarizing all of that.
Kate, you want to?
Sure,
aren't you our expert?
I'll give some cursory ones. Justin's the R guy, and so I think he'll be able to do things in a more concise and R fashion. So for me, I've used a different software for every job and lab I've been in. And so in the past, I've used SAS, Stata, SPSS, and they're all great, but they all cost money, or you have to have an institutional license or you have to pay within your institution for them. And I know SPSS, I think their institutions are trying to make them more available during COVID. But still, in spite of all of that, why pay for something when you can learn it yourself? It's a valuable tool. It's hand in hand, best pals with open science. And there's just a good community around it. So I first was introduced with it in undergrad, and it was another one of those things where I was I'm already learning a lot. I can't do R. And I don't even know where to start. I think having a community and having Dustin be okay, we'll talk through this step by step. I think it's a perfect mirror for grad school because you have to try and you have to fail. And I haven't been to grad school yet. So this is a bold assertion. So I'm wrong. I've just been adjacent to grad school, but it's what I imagine grad school will be like. So maybe a good prep in that I'm trying a lot of things, I'm failing. And then I'm either going back to square one, but like with more knowledge, or I'm like trying to integrate what I've learned along the way to make a better product. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Dustin to talk in more detail and to totally disagree with me.
No, I don't. I don't think I could disagree with you, Kate, unless it's about how I should be running.
Yeah.
Then I'll bring that back again.
Fight.
Call back. Yeah, R was something that was completely new to me when I came to grad school. Well, my advisor had started at another university, and then a couple weeks into my first year, he'd moved.
Oh.
So that was fun. Yeah, we can spend another episode talking about that if we want.
Should. I'm just gonna, I feel like, Kate, like you guys are gonna come on for R. Dustin's gonna come and talk about mentor things. It's gonna be great. You're welcome back anytime.
Cool. So at the previous institution, there wasn't, like, SPSS seemed to be the only thing. And then also M+, like for more advanced stats and things like that. But coming here, there was a workshop that I went to that was all on R. And my initial understanding of R was just base R, like downloading R and opening that up. And it's just a little tiny window, and you type your code in there. And it is, I think it's disgusting.
Okay, I thought so too. I like downloaded just R, and I was like, I don't get the hype. This is a box. I don't know how to talk to the box. And the box doesn't offer me any help. And then come part 2, which is what you're probably about to say.
Yeah. RStudio. So whenever I refer to R, I always try to make it clear, like, I am talking about RStudio.
Is anyone talking about base R? Are there people like that?
Yeah. I think it's all of the people who know about, like, who started using R way back when. And
before it was cool.
Before it was, when it was still, I think it was called S before.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Isn't that like an organic chemistry thing?
I think it was S because the creators, their last names were both started with an S.
Oh. Well, I'm having this like faint memory back from my traumatic experiences in organic chemistry where things can be a certain orientation. And one of them was S and one of them was R. So I wonder if in their switching from S to R, that played into it. But there's probably some chem grad students listening to this who are coming for me because I'm probably wrong. But it just feels like something in a distant memory. So if they were like playing a pun on that and there's only a couple people who caught on, I caught on. But anyways.
It sounds like that would be totally on brand for any like academic
like
nerd.
Nerdy programming. Right.
Yeah,
sure.
But RStudio is also a free resource. And it is basically a wrapper for R. So you download R, and then you don't ever have to look at it again. Then you open the beautiful RStudio, and RStudio has a ton of functionality within it. It allows you to use R Markdown documents or other aspects. And there, like what Kate was saying, is there's this huge supportive community around RStudio. And they allow you to do, like, you can write an entire manuscript in R with the citations like we were talking about before, using the Papaya package. And so there are all of these little open source kind of people who will create these libraries or these packages that can help with one specific thing. But I think the reason why I really liked R is because it does have these challenges. And so as you're running code or like running your stats, you are very aware of each and every piece. Whereas I felt like with SPSS, it was a lot of point and click, and then like, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtains because you can never see that person.
Yeah.
And then it's like, here are your numbers. And you're like, well, what does that mean? But R really, like, you can see all the math behind it, and it's a lot more in your face. So then for me, it was just easier to see that, okay, I put this in, this comes out. But then there are those little challenges of, I got this error message. What does that mean? And then it can do just so much with making visualizations, running your stats, making
websites.
Yeah. My website, Kate's website, which you should go to. Kate, what is your website?
I don't remember.
We don't know. I know. Yeah, that was so long ago.
I'm gonna have a website one day. I feel like, I don't think I'm close to the job market, so I haven't really been like delving into website situations, but one day I'll have a website, and maybe if I actually get my ass in gear, I'll make it on R, but we'll see.
We have a whole episode on it, so you can go check that out.
I haven't watched it yet. I was actually thinking that, because we're probably going to talk about this in the future, I was like, I don't want to get too hype. I don't want to get too excited. I really want that hype to be fresh in my brain and all the life-changing things to be fresh. And actually, you talk a lot about how R is useful in this like replicability crisis and reproducing and my thesis was a replication study, and we're currently reproducing the results. So I was lucky that I'm in a lab that's very pro open science. And I think that you're absolutely right. Even though I haven't used R in that way, you're the man behind the curtain. So you can
Not
really...
Not me, like you running it.
Right. Whoever
I
you
just
are,
wanted to clarify
whoever you
that.
are out there, you will be your
Behind
own...
all Rstudio, he's like crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
That's right.
I just like
You
show
are the
up
person.
in your office. Who's this
And
guy?
Dustin's like, this is what you did. But yes, you are your own person behind your own curtain. It's more open to you. Like, you know what the heck actually went down. And it also means you can reproduce it easier. So we'll go ahead and we'll stop with our R raving. I'm still learning it. This is like a running joke on my Twitter. I am doing it. I've started. I'm learning about vectors. But also, like, I'm actually trying to learn the language so that once I get to stats... Have you guys used SAS a lot before? So my lab does like almost exclusively does things on SAS, except for like when I can't data manage in SAS. So I do SPSS data management, which is like, I'm so annoyed by the fact that I do it, but talking about efficiency, like, it's just where I'm at. I'm going to get better. But SAS is very reminiscent of Rstudio, where it has like the different windows, and if there's the help button and the help option, there's like an output window. That whole thing is like kind of reminiscent. So if you're listening right now and you're a SAS person and you're like, SAS is really kind of the same thing, but a little bit only statistics based, like that's all you can do with it, and you like that setup, R might be right for you.
Yeah, I think SAS is like halfway in between SPSS and R. So like, that's why I used it for grad, but it was my first entry into statistical programs. And so I don't have fond memories, but that's because who has fond memories of their first foray into like...
Well, and like, that's the thing. Everyone's first foray, at least in psychology, probably not as much recently, because some professors are starting to just start teaching everything in R, which is genius, and I want to find all of you and I want to hang out with you. But a lot of schools start with SPSS. They're like, it's point and click, any undergrad can do it. Well, you know what? Any undergrad could program, because if you can type a sentence, you can type out it's just another language. And I think that it would really benefit. I'm a fourth year student, and I'm like, man, I really wish my freshman or whatever year I took stats in undergrad had just been in R. And like you said though, Kate, is it also kind of runs this fine line of like, it's either going to be like this, wow, cool, I can do whatever moment, this is me so useful, or they're like, I never want to touch that again, it was traumatic and awful. So it's sort of balancing this approachability that I think is going to be really key for the people who are transitioning into it. But I don't know, as someone who exclusively learned on SPSS in 2013 or 14 and every stats class afterwards, even in grad school, I just think it's invaluable. You are saving your students time and you're making them more, what's the word I'm looking for? They can get jobs easier. What's the word? Marketable? There it is.
Employable? Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is you set expectations. Like if you start and you say like R is learnable, like it's something, I think especially like now it is, like maybe like 5 years ago, there were fewer resources on how to apply to stats specifically, but that's not really the case anymore. And Dustin could probably speak more to this, but I think also as an entry, if you just said like I was a human development major, if you're a human development major, psych major, or like any in those fields, if you're like, this is something you have to know for the field, and it's like, it's going to be challenging at first, but it's going to be like, you can learn it if you spend the time with it, just like anything else. I think that would do a lot of students good. And again, it's a lot of education, right, is how you frame it. And like, if you're like, this, you can do this, then people will be able to.
I feel like you've made me feel better. Again, like I'm still really just approaching it. And so I'm like, yeah, I can learn it. It is going to be okay.
Well, that's what I tell myself. So like,
yeah, right. Right. Actually, I'm just hearing your own cognitive reappraisals over and over again. It's going to be okay. One day it's going to stop hurting. I swear.
I sound calm right now. I mean, when I'm actually like shaking the computer.
I think one of the like, an intermediary point that I've been trying to look more into is using JASP, so JASP. It's also free open source software that uses a lot of the back end. Like a lot of the back end is R, but it is more in this point and click framework, but more transparent than SPSS is. So if that's something, I think that could be like it could wean you off of SPSS before then transitioning fully into R. If that's something that you're concerned about or worried about, that I think JASP is a really great resource as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. I actually never heard of that. And I think that I easily fall into like, oh, let me try the little bit less painful thing first, which is really just elongating the painful process. So I'm like, me personally, I just have to jump in with 2 feet. I just have to approach everything with opposite action. And like when I really don't want to do it, it means I have to do it. So me personally, I probably wouldn't, but I know there are a lot of people who are like, if it was just a little bit less overwhelming, it would open so many doors. So that's great advice. Now, we have another resource here. Kate, you mentioned this to me today. I never heard about it. I would love to hear, is it called Stork or Stork Lab?
It's Stork App. I think it's like the actual, like storkapp.com.
Storkapp.me.
There it is. Okay, yeah. It was from Research Twitter, which again, I have to credit Dustin for 2 years ago being like, like, I was like, I have a Twitter to follow running. And he's like, do you research Twitter? And now he didn't say it like that. I'm sorry.
Academic Twitter is great.
And it was James Heathers, who's like a great follow, who was like, oh, this is how I kind of keep track of what's coming out in my field, in my area. And so if you like put in keywords related to your area of interest, any time that like word is in a journal that's just recently been published, then it'll pull the article for you and email you. It's like usually between, for me, it's like 5 and 20 publication. Puberty, menopause, and menarche are the words that I have. And so like anything related to that will come up. It's just easy to sort because like a lot of like the animal studies or if it's like related to something I'm uninterested in, just pass by it. But I think every time I get it, it's like 1 or 2 articles that I look at the abstract, or like, so maybe actually it's like 4 that I look at the abstract and then 2 that I end up like skimming or reading the whole article. And so that's just a good way, I think, to do 2 things is like alerts you immediately if there's something you're interested in, but it also kind of gives you an idea of like what the area of field is doing. Or for example, with puberty, a lot of people are talking about precocious puberty, and there's a lot of research, and I would imagine because there's a lot of research, there must be a lot of funding in that area right now. And so I know that that's an area that a lot of like in medicine, for example, they're really focused on. And maybe if you're someone who's trying to make a career in something that hasn't been done yet, you can kind of see where the holes might be or get trend ideas.
I think that that's amazing. I mean, just hearing that, it reminds me of, I feel like every couple months, I'm like, okay, go to my university's library page, go to the favorited journals, and let's just scroll through the past couple months and see if anything pops out. How many hours does that take me? 1 to 2. How long would it take me to look at the name of an article in a daily email? Less than 5 minutes. I think it's super efficient, especially because I feel, and I don't know about you guys, I feel like I don't always know where to find the new stuff, or stuff that I'm looking for is not always in like the 5 to 10 journals that I sort of regularly take a look at. And it's hard to keep up with things, especially when you're like simultaneously building your theoretical understanding and adding to it. Like I feel like I'm just at a place where I'm like, I have a foundation in 3 areas maybe. It's a lot to add to when you're still building the foundation. So that seems like a really approachable way to do that. So that's storkapp.me.
That's right. Yeah. Storkapp.me. Kate she talked about it. I think it was one of your recommendations during one of our episodes.
Yeah, it was.
Like your future direction.
So that's another great resource there on You Can Grad School, is that you guys always have future directions, whether it's like just a normal book recommendation or like an actual tool like you just mentioned for this Stork app. So I definitely recommend everyone look out at the blog posts if you want. I know like it was on the end of your YouTube episodes and I was like, how do you spell that? And so the blog post always has things, which another point that I didn't mention before, accessibility with having things typed out in a blog post and having the YouTube video. I love that. You guys were talking about open science in one of your episodes, and I love that the blog post, you mentioned here are all the people that made us realize like, oh shit, we have a problem. And I love the names were bolded. It was all about all the things that were screwed up. And I was like, I follow this. I know exactly who these names are. I knew them before, but it was like very easy to follow and a great succinct version of what you guys talk about. So if people don't always have an hour, or if they need to figure out like, do I want to listen to the whole episode? Let me check out the blog post. It's awesome. I wanted to share one more resource. This is one you guys have never mentioned, and it a little bit surprised me and a little bit didn't. Have you guys heard of Notion?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Change our lives.
Oh my gosh. Here's the thing. This is my first episode that I've been able to talk about this, and I love Notion. So this is a resource really for the highly conscientious and really more like the productivity nerds. So I think Dustin, I think it's actually both of you, but it sounds like Dustin at least is driving that train for right now. And Kate, within a year when you're gonna, I mean, you're gonna be there for sure. But I watch a lot of productivity YouTubers. And so the past few months, I was watching a video by a creator named Ali Abdal, and he is a doctor in the UK who makes YouTube videos on productivity and books that he's read and just like day in the life. He's great. I recommend him to anyone. But he was using this app called Notion, and now he gets sponsored by them. It's a really beautiful story. Notion is basically a combination of every to-do list, notebook, project managing app all in one. A lot of people online talk about they have replaced using Evernote completely with Notion. It does that thing that Trello does with like moving the boards around. Trello users will know what I'm talking about and no one else will, but that's fine. But it does everything. So the thing about it that got me is you can sort of make databases, you can link databases within different pages. I can make a list of something that has a date attached and push one button and it puts it on a calendar, or you can just do so many things. So if you're somebody who gets overwhelmed by options, this might not be for you. But if you're somebody who really likes to sort of curate either project managing or personal life fully from scratch, this is a great tool. You can make websites on this, but there are a couple of college students and a couple of YouTube creators with videos on how they use it, and I've kind of merged it together to create a system that I'm currently working with. So, class notes are good to be put on there. I'm doing everything on it. I am managing papers I'm currently writing, projects, my I'm managing this podcast, I'm managing like my habit tracking, running tracking, all of it on this app. And I have made all of those pages organized exactly how I want, pages and pages however I want, all completely on my own. I cannot recommend it enough. It might take a couple hours for you, kind of similar to Zotero, like you open it up and you're like, okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to organize this. Once you get that down, I mean, it is like, I don't use a paper notebook to write to-do lists anymore. I used to use Things, which is an Apple app for to-do lists. I don't use that anymore. I don't use OneNote anymore. Everything is in this one app, and it's free on your computer. It's free on your phone. It exists on a cloud. It is amazing. I cannot say enough good things about it.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, no, I think that would be a good thing. I can like start to, it's always like nice when you have a fresh start with like starting grad school or starting a new job, whatever it is. So I can start using that. That sounds really nice, especially, I think with everything probably being mostly online this fall, keeping track of everything seems a little bit overwhelming, especially when you're always in the same space. So my memory, I think since COVID and social distancing started has like kind of been shot. So this sounds great. Yeah.
I would say like I first heard about it and then I Googled it. That was not helpful for me personally. But when I watched YouTube videos of how other people organized it, kind of similarly to like when I saw how you use Zotero, I was like, oh, I get it. Oh, okay, I can make this work for me. So even Excel, I don't really use Excel anymore. I used to do that for project tracking or when I submit things to conferences and, you sort of change the color from like yellow to like green, submitted, was it accepted? And the box is open until I put yes when it is. I'm doing all of it on Notion. There's even a page I have for like research and it's all my research projects. And so when I put it in a database, let's say it's like, my thesis manuscript, which I'm looking to submit soon, I can click on that and it's its own page. And on that page, I can have that same database referenced, just that line of it. I can have to-dos for that, all of my meeting notes for that project. I can have other notes just all in this one page that exists for the project. Like, everything. You can do everything.
Okay, bold. You'll have to send me the YouTube links.
I will. Maybe I'll even link it here for this episode for people so that you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I recommend Notion to everyone. It's a great productivity app. And
Yeah, I think really kind of the main goal of what we've been trying to do and continue try to do is demystifying things. And I think that's like if that is through these tools or just talking more openly about things, like a lot of what it sounds like you've been doing or are going to continue doing with other guests, just like how to navigate these things, because we're humans, like we need to be loved and seen. Mm-hmm. And how do we do that without like selling our soul to things or understanding why we're getting pushback where we are? I think one of the other things, just as an update to You Can Grad School, we're going to try to balance having an audio portion and like doing something more in a podcast space. So only audio, although you won't see mine and Kate's faces. You can imagine them because you'll see them on YouTube.
That's right.
And then having like a weekly or bi-weekly like happy hour, office hour thing where we'll be available to talk about maybe you had trouble with an R script, or you want to talk about some research topic that you're not able to because we're all social distancing. So we're trying to work out what that schedule is going to look like, but that's kind of our direction.
I love that. It really also speaks to the community thing that I think all of us here are going for in different ways. And I love this idea that it's like, you know, here are all these resources. We're going to keep chatting about this. And also, let's just like meet and hang out and let's talk about these things. I mean, that sounds like something I'm definitely going to pop into whenever I'm able to. So I think that that's an awesome resource. And I'm happy to hear that you guys are still going to continue some semblance of like getting together, because exactly what you both said with COVID, you know, it's not like we're all going to meet up at a conference. I think that that is a great way for grad students to meet each other, do some of that sideways networking, and feel supported, because grad school is really hard. And it, like you said, it doesn't have to be. It's another resource for people to feel heard and understood and supported and celebrated and all those things. I could keep anding. I'm going to stop. But it's all of that. I just want to thank both of you so much for coming and chatting with me today. I do want to remind listeners again about where you can find You Can Grad School. I'm going to go ahead and give their Twitter account because their website is linked there, but you can find them at Twitter at can_grad, CAN_GRAD. I'm also going to have this linked in the description for the episode, so go ahead and check it out there. Dustin and Kate, if people want to find you online or connect with you, where can they find you? I know you already said this before, but why don't we just go ahead and give your Twitter handles again?
Yeah, so I am on Twitter at Dustin Haraden, just my name, so DUSTIN HARADEN, and my website's on there as well. You can link to that.
Yes, definitely check out his website, check out the You Can Grad School website and Kate's website that she's about to promote as well. All of these made in R. Am I thinking of that right?
Yeah, those two are. Mine
Yours is made in R too.
Yeah, no. Yeah, mine is too. It's just it's a mess. It's
gonna be great.
Style.
It's better than mine.
Present. Yeah, you'll have to scroll down. It's not readily available up like in my bio or anything, because why would I do that to myself? But yeah, my handle is Kate_Mick, and that's the letter K and the number 8_MCC. Can be found there, and my website should not be viewed, but will be hopefully updated.
Well, here's the thing, right?
When I make a website through R that I'm proud of, it will be included in my bio. So if it's not there yet, it's not there yet.
Here's what I'm going to say, right? Let's say that hypothetically a year from now, somebody stumbles on this and they're like, oh, let me go to Kate's Twitter page and oh, look at this beautiful R website, right? So it's like, it's all time is irrelevant. It's there. It's going to be there.
Welcome to the future.
That's right.
The pandemic is over.
Can it please be 2021? I'm ready. I wasn't ready for 2020. And now that we're here, I was like, you know what? I was right to feel like I wasn't ready for this to happen, and I'm ready for it to be over.
I'm going to wait for the next train to come.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what? I don't need this. You can take this cab. I'm going to wait for the next one. Thanks for the offer, though. But yes, so anyone listening, I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode, and I'll catch you next time. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast, you can find the podcast on Twitter at Dear Grad Student, or if you just want to connect with me online, you can find me on Twitter at Elana_Gloger. That's ELANA_GLOGER. And if you like what you heard, tell your friends, tell your cohort, tell those undergrads that you're mentoring. Also, if you can, please rate, review, and subscribe to Dear Grad Student on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or, wherever you find your other favorite shows. And as a reminder, all resources and links mentioned in this episode can be found in the description. And until next time, warmest regards, best wishes, sincerely, Elana.